JRPGs. They're my favorite video game genre, and it's a genre that tends to stick to some gameplay tropes for the most part, for better or for worse. I think that most of the time, this can be fun. I love turn-based battles. I have some mixed feelings about experience points, but hey, they're effective at making you feel good. And who could forget how magic just steamrolls everything that it touches? The JRPG is a genre that's built on its own legacy, and people like me have come to love the ideas that it's continued to iterate on. However, there's one thing that I think usually has way less of an impact on games than it really should. In a lot of JRPGs, there's a type advantage system of some kind. Basically, if a given unit is X type, they'll deal more or less damage to a different unit of Y type. It's an easy universal system that replicates different effects, like how leaves catch fire or how mud can put out fires. It has its roots mainly in Dungeons and Dragons, which has distinct damage types that affect monsters on an enemy-by-enemy basis. If you shoot an arrow at a basilisk, it will deal less damage because of its tough hide that causes it to resist the piercing damage. So, since so many RPGs are based just on what Dungeons and Dragons was doing, it's only natural that this mechanical shorthand would become popular with them. Despite this, I don't think it works particularly well. In most games, it's barely a system. Look at Final Fantasy VI, my favorite game of all time. This game features a type advantage system that's so minuscule that not knowing it doesn't matter in all the fights. Sure, the Purple Octopus Ultros is weak to fire, but knowing that information barely helps you at all. It does double damage, but you could just as easily kill him without it. At that point, why even have it there? One character you get early on in the game, Edgar, ends up acquiring a late game tool that allows you to give a weakness to any enemy. This tool is almost completely useless because the strongest spells in the game don't even have a type anyway. It's just extremely bizarre to me that there is this system within the game that is essentially functionless. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's for role-playing, but that's just not a thing that's in Final Fantasy VI because the player has very little input in it. The game that I've played where these systems are the most important to the experience are the Pokemon games. In fact, knowing type advantages in those games turns them into complete jokes, which is its own issue. Pokemon shouldn't be ridiculously pants-shittingly hard or anything, of course, but just knowing what type is good against another type means that you completely steamroll everything in the game, which cuts any tension the story might have. It turns the game less into one of strategy and more into memorization. As long as you know what types other Pokemon are and what types are good against those types, you can never lose. It's really embarrassing. And this brings me to Fire Emblem, which I think strikes a pretty good balance in its type management system. Granted, I've only played Fire Emblem 7, The Blazing Blade, and I don't even like that game, but still. It's a simple weapons triangle. Axes are good against spears, I get against swords, I get against axes. My only major gripe is that it doesn't really make any sense, but otherwise it's surprisingly well balanced. The types are useful, but due to the weapon durability system, you can't just spam them all the time. There's a risk-reward dynamic here. Do you use the weapon that's really good for an easy victory, or do you save its uses for another day in case it breaks? It's a really simple but effective way to implement type advantages into an RPG, and it's absolutely my favorite that I've seen so far. Something similar but not quite the same is Breath of the Wild's physics system. While not quite type advantages, it's pretty impressive how many different actors can interact with each other in the game to create a set of universal laws. Grass can get lit on fire, liquids can get frozen, things can get dropped on enemies to deal damage, metal conducts electricity, etc. It's all pretty unique in how it comes together, and though Breath of the Wild is not an RPG and these aren't exactly type advantages, I think it's an interesting innovation evolution on the tried and true concept, and it might be how we see them in the future. JRPGs are a genre that adhere to a specific set of ideas, some of which I really like and others I don't. I'm not particularly fond of type advantages, from games where they're useless like Final Fantasy VI to games where they're way too useful like Pokemon. Fire Emblem is a rare case where I think there's a balance between the two, mainly due to its weapon durability systems, and Breath of the Wild was an interesting take on it. This has been Arcade Everlasting, who really doesn't like Pokemon or Fire Emblem beyond thinking the character designs are really good, signing off. Thank you for watching.